the full-size candy bars.
I think it makes a lot of sense. So, man, this is our last book episode for a while.
It is.
And Travis, you cheated on us, and you've seen the episode already.
Let's not discuss that on air, though, because I may or may not
to.
have done some things that I should not have done. But actually, I should hold on. I'm going to disconnect my VPN, so I'm not in England right now. Disconnect.
And we lost you.
Uh-oh.
Now he's nowhere. He's in a void.
Like Janet.
Like Jan. Oh, ooh, he's gone.
Oh, totally gone.
There he goes.
Like Derek.
Can he get back in?
And here I am.
There he is.
Oh, there he is.
And
Back
now
in the
you're back
US.
on the east.
Was he really gone?
This flight was woof. Woof.
We got a nice T-shirt game. I like the Fantastic Four shirt.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I got one. I got one for you. Can you see it?
I can't see the words, though, because you're blurred.
It says, "I hate you."
That's
All right.
hilarious.
Okay. Yeah. So we got our hands full.
Is this too loud? Do I need to turn the volume on it down?
No, you're good.
Okay. So it just sounds loud to me.
Because you can hear yourself.
So I can hear. Okay.
No, I think everybody sounds pretty good. How do I sound? I haven't even asked.
You always sound warm and in the same room as whatever's recording. I always sound like I'm like down the hall.
That's a big part of it. Is I have the device doing the recording. It helps.
Well done, device.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we ready for this? JoAnna, you got some heavy lifting here.
Oh God. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Shake it out.
Leroy.
Hello and welcome to the Amber Spycast, your one-stop shop for all things His Dark Materials. My name is Alaric. I'm joined with two amazing co-hosts, Travis and JoAnna. We're diving into the final 3 chapters of The Subtle Knife, finishing up the first 2 books of this amazing trilogy, heading into watching His Dark Materials on TV coming up next week. But for this week, JoAnna, you mind diving into this last bit for us?
Yeah, and I'm diving deep here, Alaric. So in the world of Ci'gazze, Lyra, Will, and the witches travel north toward the rift in the sky. Serafina notices that the spell she used to heal the wound on Will's hand is not working. As they stop to rest and eat, some witches report that they saw a balloon with 2 men in it flying over the sea. Shortly after, Ruta Skadi returns and gives an effusive report. She says that Lord Asriel has built a magnificent fortress in another world, and that creatures from every world have joined him in his war against God. She also overheard Ghasts say that there is only one thing that could destroy God, something called Æsahættr. The children fall asleep, and while Ruta and Serafina are upstream discussing their plans, a strange light radiates from their camp. They return to discover that angels have come on a pilgrimage to see Lyra. Meanwhile, Lee, Scoresby and John Parry are sailing above the sea in Ci'gazze with forces from the church in hot pursuit. Although Parry uses magic to conjure a storm that brings down one of the zeppelins, Lee has to make a crash landing and abandon the balloon. That night in the dreamscape, John Parry brings down 2 more of the zeppelins that are pursuing them. The last group sets fire to the forest, and Lee agrees to keep the soldiers in the 4th zeppelin at bay, while Parry escapes to find the knife bearer. Lee holds the soldiers off with the help of his demon Hester, and Parry escapes, but Lee and Hester are killed. Before they die, they call out to Serafina Pekkala for help. Serafina leaves Will and Lyra in the care of her witches and goes to find Lee. One of the witches, Lena Feldt, sees people in the distance and goes to investigate. She arrives at a camp to find Mrs. Coulter and Lord Boreal. Mrs. Coulter has learned how to control the specters and uses one to capture the witch's demon and torture Lena. Mrs. Coulter forces her to tell her what she knows about Lyra, then kills Lena and Lord Boreal and summons the specters. Up the mountain, Will can't sleep, so he goes for a walk. In the darkness, he runs into a man who is actually John Parry, and they fight. The man realizes that Will is the knife bearer, and he cures Will's wound. He says that Will has to bring the knife to Lord Asriel so he can use it in his fight against God. Will tries to give the knife to Parry, but he refuses it. John Parry lights a lamp so he can see Will, and just as Will realizes that he is looking at his father, a witch who had been in love with Parry kills him and then herself. Devastated, Will takes his father's cloak and leaves to find Lyra. Along the way, he meets two angels who urge him to go with them to Lord Asriel. When he returns to the camp, Will sees that the witches have been attacked by specters and Lyra is gone. The angels try to get Will to come with them, but Will simply stares at Lyra's knapsack, which contains the alethiometer, unable to decide what to do.
This was quite the ending of this book. Emotionally fraught,
Yes.
to say the least. What was our feeling on just how this all played out, this book, and the adventure that it kind of culminated in?
This was heavy. This was heavy. Really important to remember that Will and Lyra are 11 or 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Because they went through a lot of emotionally heavy situations, especially Will in that last chapter.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm jumping ahead. I was really moved by pretty much everything I read, from the Alamo Gulch scene was pretty heavy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, even down to the angels looking at Lyra, like coming to see her and sort of witness her, and how kind of special that moment was and how important Lyra is to them.
Mm-hmm.
Was moving. There was a lot of bits and pieces, even something as small as that, although I guess sort of large, but was affecting.
Yeah, there was so much that went on in these chapters. Like it took me a double reading to really take it all in and to kind of understand the scope of everything that had been going on. I mean, you read it and you're kind of caught up in the moment, and you're excited by it and thrilled by it and saddened by it and all these things. But it took me a second time to actually like really understand the impact of some of the things that had happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's start at the top here. The attempt to heal Will with this very elaborate spell, so elaborate that I was like, did they just cut open a bunny rabbit and then she sort of heals the bunny rabbit, seals it up, and it's kind of dazed and doesn't even realize they're there for a second, and then realizes they're there and like hops off totally fine.
Yeah.
Really strange spell, and I thought, oh, this is gonna do it. This is like legit. This is what we've been waiting for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you can reseal a bunny,
right?
Clearly, it'll reseal a finger.
Absolutely. So the fact that as we move further into this chapter, he's still bleeding. We talked a little bit about the kind of wound that the knife can make. This feels like an unhealable wound. I mean, anyone being cut by this is doomed.
Right.
Without very special magic, something that the witches don't have apparently.
Right, and since
an easily produced salve by his dad,
Neosporin. Let's be honest, it was just Neosporin, wasn't it?
It totally was. I mean, in fairness to the bunny, Serafina did test it on like a tree or something first.
Yeah, a piece of tore some, yeah, and then it just put it back on. That's true.
Yeah.
So she kind of tested it on a plant, and then she was like, "Hey, that worked." And then they, they grabbed that poor bunny, and it was terrible.
Upgrade the testing.
In hindsight, healing the sapling or the piece of wood maybe is even more astounding in a way. I don't know. It seems like wood, breaking apart something like that would be impossible to fix, and you can stitch up a body, and we have the power to heal a creature, but you could never put a tree back together, right? Mm. That was I guess, in hindsight, that's pretty amazing.
I mean, it's wood glue.
It's yeah, but so Will and Lyra have quite a talk here. This is they've communicated quite a bit, but they might have opened up a little bit more here. Maybe the trust level is raising a little bit. What do you think about their conversation?
I mean, the level of vulnerability for Will is like off the charts here, and he shares a story with Lyra that is, it's interesting because it kind of, to back up just a tiny, tiny bit, they're having this other kind of lighter conversation, and they're talking about never trusting children again. And Lyra's like, well, I never thought kids would do that. Only adults, in her experience, only adults had done those kind of things, but kids had been kind and kids had been, well, kids.
Mhm.
And Will was like, no, like I've seen kids. And then he goes on to tell this story about his mom when he had to go to school one day. And I think it was more recently, I'm guessing, right? He was a little bit older.
Yeah.
He was a little bit older. It wasn't like when he was little and when he was 7, but that story was it was tough to read.
That was awful. That was heartbreaking for Will and for his mother.
Yeah. She was wandering.
Yeah.
She was, barely dressed or hardly dressed, or, didn't really realize what she had on.
Mm-hmm.
And it incited this group of boys. And, when he described it, he said it was just like the cat.
Yep.
Which was, that was just such an awful image.
Yeah, this is a child who's witnessing his mother being dehumanized. How terrible was that?
Mm-hmm.
And he says, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's the anger that wells up in him is something we've seen in play a little bit in current Will, and maybe this is where it's born. His fierce protection of his mom is where some of his anger and rage comes from.
Right, because what he says to Lyra is that they hated her, like it. Because it's kind of hard to gauge, I think in the beginning of that little bit, if he's mentioning that she's dressed a certain way, to try to understand exactly what the boys' motivation was. But by the end of it, it was they hated her. They knew she was different, and he felt like they were going to kill her, just like they were going to kill the cat. And so then later, then he goes to school and he tells her that he beats the crap out of this kid.
Like broke his arm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe he wasn't.
His friends.
Yeah, I can't believe he wasn't just straight up kicked out of school at this point. He struck a deal, I guess, to stay in school. I guess I can't imagine that happening and a more significant punishment not taking place.
Yeah,
I guess it depends on the school district and its funding.
And the kid deserved it. Hello.
Yeah, totally.
But children can be cruel. Even in my life, I know that's something that's commonly said, and certainly in Will's world or our world, children can be cruel. And it's interesting to me that Lyra hasn't witnessed that she hasn't. We've seen just a little snippet of her life, but going back and thinking of the encounters that we had with her with other kids, even in dire straits when they're in Bolvangar, they're all kind of kids. And somewhat innocent. They're on varying, degrees of exuberant or happy or sad or whatever, but none of them seem to be like fighting each other. They do kind of stand with each other when they need to stand with each other. But Will's world is more cruel.
I wonder if it's being in touch with their demons. That stops them from dehumanizing people.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So we already talked about Will's hand. This spell, unfortunately, does not seem to be working. And we'll continue to sort of... Will, is described in these 3 chapters as being somewhat pale. Like he has no blood left. He even says, how much blood do I even have? And I don't think I have much more. It's like he's just bleeding constantly.
Yeah,
the poor kid. God, I feel terrible for this kid.
And he is so worried.
He is worried. Well, the swelling, it's grotesque. Yeah.
And but towards the end of that that 13th chapter, he's so worried about it. He thinks Lyra's asleep, and he talks to Pan about it. And he asks Pan, he's just like, am I going to be okay? Like,
yeah, he says, Pan, am I going to die?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting because my guess is at this point, he realizes the connection. I love it because he realizes the connection between them, but he's not talking to Lyra. Like, do you know what I mean? Like he is, he thinks she's asleep and he is sharing something with Pan that he thinks is only for Pan. And then of course we see a little bit later that Lyra is laying there like wide-eyed awake.
Yeah.
And quiet and overhears everything. But he said that he was afraid to die. And then he said the other part was he didn't want Lyra to think he wasn't brave. Am I right?
That's right. And Pan says she thinks he's the bravest anyone she's ever met.
Right.
And then he says he thinks she's the bravest that he's ever met. And then that's when we see that she's awake and she heard that.
Right.
Yeah.
And her heart is beating fast.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a good detail.
I'm starting to ship. They're
still young.
So Ruta Skadi rolls up. It's good to see Ruta Skadi again, but she brings some unwelcome guests with her.
Yes.
Didn't think I would even see cliff ghasts again, but alas, here are the cliff ghasts. And we have to fight some cliff ghasts.
I mean, they're just falling from the sky.
They're like everywhere.
They're just like coming down, and she's, and it's like it's out of nowhere. But she handles it. They handle it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with some help.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I love the passage though. The whiz of arrows and the grunt and scream of voices raised in pain or anger or command. I mean, they see the cliff gas, they know what to do.
Yeah, they do.
They immediately get down to business.
They fought enough cliff ghasts in their time. They know what's up. And the cliff ghasts just don't seem like great fighters. It's interesting that Ruta, her story about their intelligence and how they seem to. I guess when we initially are introduced to cliff ghasts, they just seem like mindless, like gargoyles or something, right?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, is this the first time we realize that they are like sentient?
It is, and it made me wonder: are all of the creatures, except for the polar bears, are all of the creatures variations on people? Are they all variations on humanity? Or they're just different like offshoots of humanity in Lyra's world? Because we've got the witches, the cliff ghasts, the ghosts. I mean, so far, with the exception of the polar bears, everything is a variation on people.
And with real history,
right.
The ghasts seem to have been around since the last battle with heaven, 300 years, right? Mm-hmm. They've been around. And there's one there's like maybe a hierarchy, an elder that is respected by these other mindless. I mean, they seemingly mindless monsters are following this one and listening to him talk and learning. And Ruta's kind of taken aback by it all, really, I think.
Well, yeah, I could imagine that, that would have been anybody's assumption seeing them. It was our assumption reading that they were just these, mindless, like not like the polar bears and not like the witches. Like they were just a sort of more primal kind of a being. But I love that because I was going to say what you just said there, Alaric, which is like they have this like community, they have this social structure, and there's a hierarchy and they are bringing this grandfather. I mean, do they actually call it like grandfather? What do they call it? The oldest one.
Yeah.
But they like they call him grandfather. And how far does your memory go back? And they're asking that ghast all of these questions and making fun, like, and he's kind of making fun of them for their questions. He's like, you're asking such a ridiculous question. Like, and it was really neat to see that, I think, just adds, I guess, a little bit of a depth, which is what Pullman will do. Like his characters do not remain flat.
Right.
And so this, whatever introduction we had to the cliff ghast, he was like, yeah, I'm going to show you something else.
But this old one is 33,000 years old, right? Like that's how long it's been since the last war?
Or was the knowledge passed down to him from generation to generation? He's aware of it, or was he actually there?
I mean, that's what I would guess, is that the knowledge was passed down.
But he's old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very old.
The witches deal with these ghasts with some regularity, I feel like. Have they never had this kind of experience with them before? Is this the first time they've seen behind the curtain in all these years?
I guess.
I mean, it would seem to me there wasn't really a reason to spy on the Clift ghasts. You know what I mean? Like your experience with them would just be avoiding them as you got close to cliffs and killing them if they got near you. But she, on her way back, because, you know, the way she was working her way through the cliff, she heard them talking, so she stopped. And then she, you know, she made herself invisible and she went and she just kind of like listened.
Mhm.
So I'm not even sure they realized that they maybe had this sort of setup, or were functioned that way.
Yeah, and this elder even gives us a new word for the subtle knife, is aware of the subtle knife and gives us a new word. Can you pronounce it again?
Oh, I have to. I can't. I had to phonetically write it out in my thing. Æsahættr.
It's there is a th, because this is from the audiobook. It's got like this th sound in the end. It's like Æsahættr.
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 Yeah,
Æsahættr. Okay.
yeah, it's wild.
And this is the same word that we've heard about Asriel needing.
Right.
This
Right.
is something that, you know, he says, you know, this ghast says he doesn't have it, so he can't win without it. But we, you know, we're not necessarily sure until we realize that sure enough, this is what he needs, and we know the person who has it.
Mm-hmm.
So Ruta also talks a lot about Asriel's fortress, and she's pretty goo-goo over Asriel, and they, you know, she kind of sneaks in to see him, and there's a little like the camera pans to the drapes, and the drapes kind of blow in the wind moment.
Yes. And trains and tunnels and rockets and
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh my goodness, they get it
Yeah.
on.
She was fangirling so hard.
She really
for
was.
for him. It was pretty heavy.
What is Asriel?
This is my question. This is the question I have that I'm desperate to have answered. Because in the first book, he's a guy struggling to get funding.
Yes.
He wants a grant.
Yes.
Meanwhile, just months later, he has a trans-dimensional fortress where he's gathering an army from multiple universes to go fight God.
And these people, these creatures all know of him and are ready to fight for him.
Yeah, so clearly he's done some selling of this whole process. But there's the description of his fortress that kind of got me when Ruta Skadi was talking about the lizards and the apes, and something that I'm convinced is a Pullman reference to the Wizarding World, where she references witches just like us, but they have men, but they're men and they fly around, and it sounded very much like the Harry Potter thing, because they're
Mhm.
contemporaries, and
Mhm.
I know they know of each other.
Mhm.
But like I'm fanboying out reading this because it sounds like, you know, Godzilla's and robots and and Planets of the Apes and all kinds of stuff coming to fight with Lord Asriel, and yeah, how?
I mean, you're impressing a witch.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Like these women have been around for what is, you know, minimum of hundreds of years.
Mhm.
Three,
Right.
two. I think like the younger one was like 200 years old. You know,
Yeah.
she was like ridiculously, you know, young to them. And so yeah, it impressed her. It surprised her. She was fascinated by it. I mean, and what she says, and this is I wasn't sure if you were going to go here or not with it, Travis, but like at one point in the book, she says, "Sisters, he's been preparing this for eons. Like,
yes,
can he control time? What? What is that? What?" I was just like, I don't know, like he started this before we were born, is what she says.
right.
And I'm just like, what the
And
heck
is
is being
that
drawn?
we as in like the oldest witch, or we as in the witches as a species?
I just feel like he's an angel or a fallen angel or something. So
Mm.
he is an immortal of some kind.
He's got to be.
He's got to be, which maybe means that Mrs. Coulter is as well.
I mean, Asriel is like the name of a demon, right? Like that's a demonic name. So
it just doesn't seem possible. But you know, your cold open was like, this guy was like having a meeting in a college, almost gets poisoned. He seemed so human, and gets himself captured, and
yeah,
how is that possible? But maybe he doesn't have powers necessarily, but once he crosses over into the other universe, it sort of opens up all his possibilities, and he's already started building. Started building this years and years and years ago, and he hasn't been able to get back to it. Maybe that was part of it, is he had to get back to his fortress. He's been stuck in this world. Who knows?
Yeah.
But he has a demon.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think this whole thing is clear. Like it's literally the second fall. Like
right.
He is gathering angels for a second war, just like the first war. It would make some sense that they would gather around. Like I can't imagine they would necessarily gather around a human, considering the way the alethiometer talks to humans a lot of the time in this very condescending way.
Yes.
Or sort of like, let me tell you what's going on kind of way. And there's something about him. There's something about him that like Thorold is like, I don't know how he gets what he wants. I don't know how he just asks for it and it comes, and they're like, what's up with him? You know, does he control time? But there's something about Will that is the same as Asriel that they see here. Mm-hmm. And at some point, I think it's Ruta says to her, have you looked him in the eyes? And she was like, I don't dare. He seems the same to me as Asriel. Have you looked him in the eyes? And she said, I don't dare.
That the fierceness and the fire in his eyes is palpable. Yeah.
It was really, which is maybe why then those guys left when he would stand up for his mom. Maybe there was something that was on, they could see it and they were like, I'm going to just, back up.
Yeah. So this is where the angels, this is about when we see the angels coming to look at Lyra while she sleeps, during this tale, Ruta's tale. I'm sort of interested in what you guys think of their scale and their size, and how they can sort of change their size a little bit. They're able to sort of shift in space a little bit, and their brightness can change. I just love how they look at her and take her in and then just leave. Has she been watched for a long time, or people just realizing, or the angels just realizing what she is?
Well, I don't think so. I think they've known for a long time. It's the reason the witches have their prophecy, and they knew who she was. But the angels transcend that. So the angels, I'm sure, have known for some time. From the question you asked about their scale, I mean, they're dust. I mean, they're not composed of dust. They are dust. And, we've seen dust now as subatomic particles. We've seen dust as the alethiometer. And, we know that the angels aren't even what we see. The angels are that gigantic architectural, thing that we can't comprehend. So I don't even know that scale is even a question for angels. Angels are what they are at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's almost like only what we can even fathom. I mean, when Ruta Skadi was with them at the first time, and she said, well, you look basically like you look human to me. And they were like, well, yeah, you would, because you're such a young human. Like they, you know what I mean? They kind of said like, well, that's about what you're capable of seeing. And yeah. And so like, they aren't able to do that. So I feel like, humans see them in the only way that they can comprehend it, which is how people worship God. You know, they
Right.
worship God in the only way that they think in some way can fit into some kind of way that their puny little brain can comprehend some or fathom some parts of this unfathomable thing. It reminded me of the three wise men coming to just like, you know, look at baby Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't leave any gifts. But it still reminded me of it.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
much so.
that's a good point. So we leave this group and we head up and see John, Parry, and Lee in their balloon in their journey. So buckle up, guys. So they're in the balloon and they at some point Lee realizes that they're being followed, or that he can see there's zeppelins off in the distance. They're far enough away that they feel like they need to head the same direction they're going, and they're going to keep going. And but it would be nice to have a little bit of wind to go a little bit faster. But they have a few conversations as this is going on. But John Parry has some significant powers here. He's a proper conjurer here. He conjures up a storm the likes that Lee hasn't seen in some time. Shocking, really. How I was like, oh, he's going to get a gust of wind and that's what he's going to do. But this really is something. I don't know that I thought that he had these kind of powers, but he seems even maybe not human in some way. He's bigger than what I thought he was.
Yeah, being a shaman is a lot more than I guess it would be in our world, where it's someone who knows herbs and medicines and things like that. I mean, this is like you said, he's a conjurer. This guy's a wizard.
Yeah,
you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
So one thing though, before we get into the weather control and stuff like that, when they're flying over Ci'gazze and they run into the specters.
Yep.
That was neat. I mean, here's what I thought was the salient passage. It's Lee. It's what the hell are those things? I'm not going to try to do a Texan accent. I'm sorry. And it's like the people call them specters. What do they do exactly? You've heard of vampires? There you go. There you go. I mean, these things, and they don't look the way that I thought that they would look. Like they describe them a lot more deeply here, and they're, I guess, again, my second Harry Potter reference of the show, but in my head they were Dementors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They were Dementors. They were these black cloaked things floating around, but that's not what they are at all. They're just like shimmers in the air. They're almost like disturbances in the atmosphere, which I just think is way more disturbing, even than some black cloak thing. These things aren't there. Basically what you see is the effect of them. You don't see what they are. It's I thought it was really disturbing.
Yeah, and how they gather together in these like just shimmering little strange spaces together, and they're very frightening. The Dementors are frightening in their own way, but these seem you can see a Dementor. A Dementor looks like something. It's visually striking in its own way, but imagine the thing that you see in the corner of your eye and you turn and look and there's nothing there is much more frightening.
Right.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of Doctor Who, when the Cybermen were sort of on that other part of like the dimension, and they thought they were ghosts. The people on the on Rose's side thought they were ghosts, and that's what it kind of reminded me of a little bit. But I think we're overlooking here. They give the specters full name. It's like Bastion, say my name. Specters of Indifference.
Yes.
What the heck?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Which totally reminded me of the Nothing from Neverending Story, going back to Bastion.
Yes.
And yeah, it's like the whole concept of indifference. To me, I'm wondering if like that's a writer thing, And it's the concept of indifference and lack of imagination, of lack of anything, is just so anathema to a writer's perspective that often becomes the the personification of a villain, of the ultimate villain in these works.
And what a terrible little detail about adults. Do you know what I mean? Like that we are at a place where we are, where that indifference can actually affect us, and we will just now mindlessly be, doing, well, nothing. I guess they really just kind of stand there. They don't do anything.
I don't think the Specters have ever met the three of us.
No.
We're not going out like that.
No, not indifferent. Nope.
I'll be the guy on the horse. I'll be that guy. Peace out. Yeah, that really was striking. And their conversation about that and what they were looking at. It's very lucky that they're ground based. At this point, they're flying over. They can look at them, and they don't have to be terrified of them flying up to the balloon.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm foreshadowing here.
Right.
So the storm is building here. They're getting some nice wind. They're heading for a forest for some cover, and they have some kind of crash landing. They get deliberately snagged. He's sort of dangling. I loved how this all played out. He wants to grab a piece of a tree, one that'll grab and sort of bring them down, and they can release gas and sort of hide. And they crash. I'm very worried about John. He's very frail. I think Lee is really worried about him too. You can imagine that guy falling out of the balloon's basket at 40 feet. He's not going to walk away from that. So Lee's really concerned about him. But they do get snagged on a big tree, and in driving rain and a horrible storm, and they're able to get to the ground and to some safety. John proves to be quite the Boy Scout and builds a tent, and literally a Boy Scout. A tent,
right.
A tent. What does he say? You built a fire. It turns out he had some dry matches.
Right. He was like, "Is this magic too?" Lee was like, "Is this magic too?" He's like, "No."
Boy Scouts.
I always keep these. These are the best. This is the best way to make a fire. Yeah, it's very cute. So they're in a tent, and they're seemingly in better shape now than they were when they were airborne, as far as getting away from the zeppelins. But what happens next? What is this thing that Lee goes through during the storm?
I'm finding it hard to put my finger on it exactly, because he's dreaming.
Is he?
But Hester says you're seeing. He's a seer. So he's actually so even though he's in a dream state, he is actually seeing what's happening, which Hester proceeds then to say, well, if I knew you were going to be a seer, I would have kicked that out of you. I'm kidding. I didn't know that. What? Which is amazing. That means demons can learn new things about their humans, which I think is awesome.
Right.
So but he's actually there. He's actually seeing it.
John's got to be showing him this and taking him on this journey. John's got to be the one that's making this happen for him.
Well, he's not doing a very nice job, because he melts into this white skeleton, which seems like a mean trick.
Yeah.
On something who's never seen before.
Yeah.
Like melting in front of your face.
Mm-hmm. I loved the way that I think the second zeppelin that he takes down with all the birds.
That was awesome.
Landing on the zeppelin, not only for the weight of the birds sort of weighing down, that's a lot of birds weighing down the zeppelin, but also all their tiny little claws putting tiny little holes in the zeppelin, and then they all fly away just in time for the thing to just explode. It's fantastic.
It's great.
Death for 1,000 pokes.
I just pictured black-capped chickadees, millions of them. These cute little birds. And And how does he take down the other one that Lee sees inside the command, inside the balloon? What does he do with that first one?
I don't remember. I have to look it up. I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on it as well.
Is that the one with the is it the fire one? The engine that threw out the No. That was the weapon that they had. I'm not sure.
Well, one went out with the storm.
Mm-hmm.
And one went out with the birds. And I don't
Well, there
know.
was that last one that went out when Lee shot it.
Lee shot the engine, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, either way, they take down all but one, and Lee and John start working their way out of the woods, because the way to smoke them out literally is they just decide to set fire to the entire. They use like napalm, basically, right?
Yeah.
To burn the forest, and so they have to run out of the forest before the whole thing burns up, and they end up in, I guess, rocky outcroppings, and this is kind of where Lee makes his stand. He decides, or John needs to continue. He asks Lee's main concern here is Lyra still.
Mm-hmm.
He made an oath to Lyra. He said, are you going to help her? Is what you're doing going to help Lyra ultimately? And he says yes. And Lee said, that's all I need to know, basically. And John, who is frail, is the one that continues on, and Lee, who is robust and strong, stays behind to protect them against the last remaining balloon that is starting to empty out its soldiers to come and get him.
And he does a 300/Alamo all at the same time.
He truly does. He has how many shots? 35.
I think he has 30. Yeah, and he has like 5 spare shots.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. There's 30 men, and he's remarkable, really, in this. Hester is his spotter, like his sniper spotter. It's like they've done this before, but Hester also stands there, kind of. She could get hit. She's not really hiding. She's sort of watching there and telling him where to shoot, and they're a great team. You can kind of see that on their adventures that this is how they do it.
It's how they survived all these years.
Yeah, he says though he doesn't like to take a life. He doesn't really want to do it, but Hester's like, this is it. But he unfortunately, Lee takes some hits. He gets nicked in the ear, or in the cheek, scalp, and a lot of blood from that wound. But he gets hit a few more times, and it's pretty brutal. But he's still fighting. He fights, man, till like the last. There's one of the. I think he gets to the point where he's taken out all the soldiers that are coming for him, and one of them turns and runs, and he's like, oh, I don't want to, shoot a man in the back. And Hester was like,
I love it. She's like, you don't want to die with an extra bullet. She's like, why die with a spare bullet? I was like, dang, Hester.
So great. And I think there's maybe 5 left, and he shoots the zeppelin itself, and it catches fire and explodes. He basically takes out this entire final group before he expires. Let's talk about a little bit how Hester and Lee dealt with each other in their last moments. This is, reading this particular section was really rough. The fight was exhilarating, but the moments there at the end, Hester comes down off her perch and comes close to him, and he says to her, "Don't you dare go first," which was maybe the line that got me the most.
Yeah, that was that whole section was hard. For me, it was the bit where he shot, and then it says another crack, and this time the bullet went deep somewhere inside, seeking out the center of his life. And he thought, it won't find it there. Hester's my center.
Yeah.
Just.
Go ahead. No.
Oh no! Please.
No, it's just that what made me think of the part then that got me was that after he was reloading, he said he felt something so rare his heart nearly failed. He felt Hester's face pressed to his own, and it was wet with tears. Like, it's that that connection and that support is just. But she rarely did it, and so it was meaningful.
Yeah, I mean their last moment together is when she's pressing her little proud broken self against his face and as close as she could get, and then they died. I just that was tough to read. That was tough to read.
Well, and what made it worse was Hester remembered, Lee, your flower. Like, I didn't even remember. I totally forgot that Serafina had given him that flower and said, if you ever need me, just call my name.
Yeah.
And so he does. He calls for her. Yeah.
Too late. Yeah. He was like, oh, I should have done this sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you should have, Lee.
It's just. Look, I've read a lot of books, but this sequence and this bit, and I felt like, I don't know how you felt about this, but this is my second read, and it's been a decade really since I've read it. Lee stands out so much as a major character in this story that him going this soon, it seemed too soon to me. Obviously, it's too soon anytime Lee's going to go because he's such a wonderful character, but this felt too soon.
Yeah.
The second book, I felt like I thought he made it to the third book.
Well,
right. This was a surprise.
The other day, I was looking for pictures for fan art to put into another video montage for this season's opening on YouTube, and I got to Lee Scoresby on one of the fan wikis, and everyone's got like a cause of death in like the first section. And I'm like, don't look at it, I didn't want to know because I hadn't gotten there, but it already told me that he's going to die. So I looked, and it just said casualty of battle. And like you, Alaric, I expected it to be at the end during the big battle with Asriel. I didn't expect him to go out now, but in the hero's journey, we've got to lose our Obi-Wans, we've got to lose our teachers and protectors, and this is one of those.
As a middle chapter goes, as a middle book in a trilogy, I sometimes I call middle books oftentimes like the Empire Strikes Back book, because so many of them, Empire Strikes Back is the quintessential middle chapter, which is like the journey continues, but there's no closure. The way it opens is a little, it doesn't have the same 3-act structure really,
right? Because
it now, they now know that there's going to be a third film or a third book. So Pullman, I feel like Pullman knew he was doing 3 books from the beginning, but even still, the first book has an open-ended ending, but the first book could technically stand on its own with sort of a big cliffhanger wow ending, but an unknown ending.
Right.
And if it was a failure of a book and no one cared and he never wrote a second book, it would still be a book that you could read. This book does not stand on its own, even though it's amazing. And the ending here, as we're going to get up to the next chapter, the way that he's weaving these threads together, now we feel that propulsive momentum towards the third book. And in my memory, that's another reason. Sorry about that.
That was propulsive momentum.
There you go. They're going way too fast. That's not 25 miles an hour. The way that we're sort of moving towards the third book, in my memory, it's pressed some of those things together. Whereas, Empire Strikes Back, it's like nothing's really changed at the end. There's not really, we know what needs to happen by the end of it, but we haven't gotten there yet. This, now we sort of see the things, the seeds are planted. We know what we need to do. We sort of are getting a better idea of where our characters need to move. And then we get our third book. But these kind of moments are just like total gut punches.
Well, what's always so important about Act 2 to me in the 3-act story structure is that in Act 2, everything gets worse for our heroes.
Top to bottom.
You know, again, to use the Empire example, Han's frozen in carbonite. Sorry, spoilers, everybody. You know, the rebels lose their base. They're scattered to the four winds. Han's in carbonite.
Luke abandons his training.
Luke abandons his training. Some random guy who betrayed them is now piloting the Millennium Falcon. Luke is, again, sorry for spoilers, revealed to be Vader's father. Everything that could go wrong for these guys at this point has. And then we look at this, and yeah, everything that could go wrong for them has in fact gone wrong. And you know, as we go into the next chapter, we're going to see. But I mean, at this point, we've lost Lee. We've lost, you know, the human from in this world, the guy who's the most like us in this story in Lyra's world. He's now dead. All we have left from that side are, you know, messiahs and cosmic entities. I mean, they're at this point now, you know, again, moving into what we'll hear in the next chapter, there's no one left who's our point of view. I think it's kind of pushes us as the reader to expand our perspective.
Right.
I have a piece of hope, though, because I'm listening to your, you know, I totally understand and I get where you're coming from with Empire Strikes Back. And I agree, that's absolutely. But my hope is that he called on that flower and Serafina went pretty quickly. And my hope is that she has blood moss still on her. And when she goes, even if he's dead, I mean, that rabbit, they killed it, but pretty quickly after, we're able to bring it back. Maybe they'll bring it back. Maybe she'll bring him back. I like the pitiful look in your eyes, boys. Thanks. You're like, oh, JoAnna, you're so dear. You think Lee's going to come back?
Oh,
He's going to be back. Well, they didn't say Hester faded away. And that's usually what they do when someone dies, their demon is gone. And Hester, they don't say disappeared.
I mean, I have a hard time with that. Like I had a bird that died once when I was early married to my Travis, and then it was on the bottom of the cage, and I looked at Travis. I was like, well, maybe she's sleeping. He was like, she's not sleeping. So yeah, I you're right. But that was just my little hope.
If you were, let me just add, I like this discussion point. If you expired for 30 seconds and you were brought back, your demon disappeared when you died, but then they were able to resuscitate you, would your demon come back?
I mean, it feels like once the demon has dispersed into its like essential dust, kind of,
it's gone.
It's probably gone.
Yeah. Like I totally agree with that. Like I
so
feel
you
like
wouldn't want to come back.
Yeah, like I feel like on Lyra's world, there's no like, you know, oh, I was dead on the table for 2 minutes and they brought me back. I don't think that happens.
No, because then if you came back and you didn't have your demon, you would just be like
You're
someone
as good
the
as
specter
dead. Yeah.
had.
Mm-hmm.
So
or if
nobody wants that kind of Lee Scoresby.
Right.
No.
We like the fiery Lee Scoresby.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's not really a way to transition out of that. So we're back with the witches. We see right at the top Serafina bolting, right? She gets the message, which is, as you said, maybe there's a little hope here that she gets to them. Let's talk about Lena Feldt for a second. Lena Feldt, the witch, who is going to go check out this encampment, these group that is following them. You know, she's a witch. She got some skills. She's going to go take a peek and see what they're doing, what they're up to, perhaps how far away they are. Lena maybe tries to do a few more things. And how good a job does Lena do at those additional things, JoAnna?
Girl had one job. She had one job. Serafina was like, hey, can you watch my girl Lyra? I'll be back in a minute.
No.
And she's like, as soon as she leaves, she's like, what's that over there? Audi. Like, yeah. And then when she's there, she continues to drop the ball because who does it turn out to be when she goes and looks for the people in the light?
Freaking Coulter and Boreal. She has Coulter dead to rights with a she has a arrow ready to fire, but she's so intrigued at their conversation that she decides to stick around. Of course, she believes that she is invisible. She works up a spell before she goes to the camp, but she has so many opportunities here.
Uh-huh.
You know, this is one of those, like, she lets you loose as an arrow credits, you know, director Martin Scorsese,
Right.
you know, it's over. So obviously we can't end the story here, but she really had an opportunity here, but she learned some things. But Mrs. Coulter continues to surprise me. You know, Lord Boreal in some ways feels like someone that she could actually use for a long time. You know, someone who it's an advantage to her to have him around because he's also persuasive and he has resources and whatever. But the first thing she does, you know, after she gets a bit of information from him about the subtle knife, she poisons his ass. That's it. That's really all she wanted to get from him. That's it. That's all he's got for her.
Once she had the specters under her control.
Well, yeah.
I mean, she doesn't really need Lord Boreal either. You know, like, she's got her own supernatural army. She doesn't need Lord Boreal. And, you know, before we move on from that, can we talk about the fact that we once again had to see demon on demon, golden monkey? You know,
This is the most vivid one.
I would rather rewatch the monkey.
Oh.
I would rather rewatch them. I would reread the monkey over and over and over again to never read this part ever again in my whole life.
I was cooking dinner while I had my headphones in. You know, I'm trying to fry some fish, batter dipping, all these things, and just shuddering as I'm doing this. It's just so gross. There are passages that I highlighted that I'm not going to go back towards. I don't need to see them again.
Yeah, that was a grody.
So then why was she watching? Like, anyway, there were like, yeah, whatever. She has her own.
She's nasty.
Yeah, whatever. But like, I think Coulter kept him alive because she still didn't know about the knife. And once she knew about the knife, she was like, poison ring, you know, and
you're done.
Gives them which, and then is like, hey, witch. Like, as she poisons him and then just turns around, she's like, witch, please. Yeah, she's like, what's going on? And she, what? Like, she's supposed to be invisible. I get so excited about this. What?
Yeah. And you know, her demon is chilling out across the pond, and what's coming up behind her demon now? A specter.
Yeah, the specters.
Because she was too busy being a peeping Tom.
Yep.
And she sings every fact, everything she knows.
Biggest stool pigeon.
It's like, you know, it's like at least peel back a fingernail or something first. Like literally immediately every single detail we have all learned reading these entire books, she gives up like so fast. Everything.
Does the specter even have its hands on the demon yet?
She was feeling but it didn't like grab it. No, she was nauseated. She was there. It was really messing with her. Okay. But you know, this other witch on the boat put up with a lot more and didn't give up nothing.
Yeah,
you know,
I kind of feel like this was one of those situations where, you know, the torture guy in the movie unrolls his torture kit. He doesn't do anything with it.
And that's enough.
Just unrolling it, and then you're just like, whoa, okay, you know, name right, serial number, base is over here, the whole thing. I mean, she really just dished, spilled the tea, as the kids would say.
Oh man, does she ever?
Crazy.
It's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Awful. You know, Mrs. Coulter, basic worst witch. Did they make a book about this witch? She's just the worst. Mrs. Coulter, within this one chapter, is armed with so much more information than she was when she started this chapter.
Mm-hmm.
The worst piece of information to me was that, oh, Lyra's like right over there, and you could go, she's right there, and that's like, we've been trying to get away from her for so long, and here we are, and it's like, oh, now she has the upper hand. She, you know, maybe she's always had the upper hand. Maybe we've never. This is that second, you know, the Act 2 scenario where, like, obviously things aren't going to go well for our heroes, but like, man, I felt like they were making some progress. And, you know, Serafina was with them, and they had gotten out of the city, and they were moving forward, and they were going, you know, trying to find Will's father. But homegirl blew it. This was it.
Yeah, I feel like we as readers were duped by Mrs. Coulter as well. Like we became a little complacent in the actual, you know, the vastness of her reach and the influence that she had. Like, we kind of, you know, after Bolvanger, we were like, Roger jumped on your sledge and was like throwing punches with you, so you're but she's not, like, and this is where people underestimate her. And I feel like they did that. Like, I just was like, that's why. Because the witch then tells her not just where Lyra is, but what Lyra is.
This is the piece of information that she
And
wanted. One piece of information.
And this is what she was trying to get. Oh my God, that Lyra's the second Eve. What? My God.
Yeah.
She's like, name her. She's like, she's Eve. She's the mother of all. I'm done. I'm dead.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we've got to unpack that a little bit, because I mean, we just heard that that Lyra is Eve. But what does that suggest? That Lyra is going to rebuild the human race. And what does that suggest? That the human race is going someplace at some point.
They're going to just,
like, there will not be a human race.
Yeah, destroyed.
Yeah. Dang.
Mrs. Coulter takes this information in stride also. Does she seem even that surprised by it?
It's as though someone had to be. Like, she knows that there's an inevitability, like that role is going to be created, and someone had to fulfill it.
And so she wants to now kill her even more. Or she wants to kill her.
Right.
Even more than she already did. To stop whatever that is.
And you think about it for a second. I mean, basically, Mrs. Coulter is trying to stop Armageddon. She's trying to stop the end of humanity. Yeah,
whose side are we on here? You know, Asriel, you know, I wouldn't say I was on Lord Asriel's side. The guy killed a kid to open up a portal into it's like that guy's no hero. Mrs. Coulter certainly isn't. We're following our two kids here in the middle of all this mess, but they're going to, you know, Will is sort of on his way, I guess, to Asriel, or we may feel like he needs to go to Asriel with the knife.
I mean, we know he's Asriel Jr. basically at some point.
Yeah. It just feels like there's nobody to root for here. Like, who are we supposed to be rooting for?
Yeah, I think that's the fundamental question. That might be the question of the whole series, you know? Who are we supposed to follow? I mean, Lyra is that third way, right? Like, she's not the one who's an ideologue on either side. Because that's really who the enemies are in this, right? You've got the Magisterium, the dead set, this is our ideology, whatever their ideology is. And then we've got Lord Asriel and his, you know, I must murder God ideology, you know, and the rest of us are left here in the middle to, you know, be slaughtered on the altars of both of their beliefs. And I think that, and like I said, I think that's what Pullman's entire thesis here is here. Like we hear a lot about how, he's attacking the church, he's attacking God, things along those lines. I think what he's attacking is just with fanaticism.
Yeah, and then which religion is right is also another question that comes up in our society. It's like there's so many different religions with different deities or gods, and like who's right, whose doctrine is correct. And now we seem to have two complete opposite approaches, and there's pawns. Our heroes, our young heroes, are just pawns in this bigger game that's bigger than them.
Yeah.
Although Eve is much more than a pawn. If you had to define second Eve, she's a little bit higher up that scale than you would think. Lyra, the little girl with the alethiometer would be.
Does that make the alethiometer the apple?
So we're talking about knowledge, right? She's resisting it right now. She's allowing Will to dictate what they use it for right now. Interesting. It's an interesting thought.
I mean, that makes it the alethiometer is like a combination of the apple and Pandora's box, right?
Yeah.
Got a lot of symbolism flying around here.
So, moving on to the next bit, which Will leaves the camp. His hand is bothering him significantly still. I guess he just wants to get away from camp a little bit. He goes up to get a better view. And he gets just grabbed. His arm gets grabbed in the dark by a man. And he really wrestles with this guy. He's headbutting him and kicking him, but he's thrashing. But it's like this hand will never let him go. This hand is holding him forever. This is his fate. This person has grabbed him, and he's not going to get away from this person. But this person turns out to be Stanislaus Grumman.
Also known as
John
Parry.
His father, who Will doesn't know is his father yet. John, they're in the dark, right? What is this conversation? They have a very brief conversation. What do they say here?
JoAnna?
Well, I mean, when they finally stop struggling, I mean, I'm not really sure what Grumman / Parry expected if you just grab somebody in the dark.
Yeah.
I mean, and he wasn't fighting back. Like, he was just holding on. Will was freaking the heck out and punching, and John Parry was just sort of taking it, because at some point Will realized he was just like laying on the ground, like holding his arm, and he wasn't doing anything at all. So then he kind of like stopped. He was like, oh, and then John Parry asks to see his hand. He gives him his one hand. He's like, the other hand, and Will was like, gentle, be careful. And he realizes that it's the knife bearer. And then the first thing he does is he heals his hand. He heals his hand, y'all.
Like proper, like really, really heals his hand.
Yes.
This one takes.
So I don't know what kind of magic that was.
But at the same time, again, Will was just talking about how he wished that his father was there to tell him everything was going to be all right and to kind of like fix him. And he did.
Yeah.
I just thought that was kind of awesome.
Prior to even knowing.
Right.
But when he knows that he's the knife bearer, John Parry delivers a lot of information here to him. He gets a real download about what he needs to do, which is go to Lord Asriel. Yeah. So now he really has this mission is now laid out in front of him about what he needs to do.
He is a warrior.
Yeah. At this point, he's looking for his father. That's his mission. And now his father stands before him and says his mission is to go to Lord Asriel and fight and be a warrior. You know, Will doesn't believe himself to be a warrior, but we know better that he is a warrior. And in this, unfortunately, they want to see each other. And does he light a fire here or a torch? What does he light here?
Let's see.
I think it's a lantern.
A lantern.
He has a match and he strikes the lantern. I mean, Will has, I mean, you can't blame Will before we get to the reunion part. You can't blame Will for being like, no. I mean, the way he lays out what the mission isn't just like, hey, I need you to go take this knife to Asriel. It's like, I need you to go take this knife. He's going to use it to kill God, the authority. It's like rebellion. Like he is laying this all on Will, who at this point is probably at the end of his, you know, psychological / physical rope. And he's like, I don't want it. Like he throws the knife. He's like, I don't want it. You take it. I don't want this. This is not at all. And so like, you know, his freaking out is certainly warranted.
I mean,
it's certainly warranted.
John Parry just told him that there is an existential battle going on between, you know, two sides. One is, you know, one is basically human freedom, and the other side is human bondage. And you, 11-year-old, are expected to take the side of human freedom and save all of humanity. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard enough for him to save his mom.
Yeah.
Half the time. You know what I mean? So like,
I mean, he's been bleeding for the past 72 hours. Like,
yeah, it's like a week ago, he was dropping his mom off at his piano teacher's house. You know, like his world has gotten so much bigger so quickly. You know, he's met people that are he's met witches, and, you know, he's witnessed any number of strange and unusual things. He's met Lyra, someone who is maybe the most fascinating person he's ever met. He has a real affection for her. And then it's like, oh yeah, now you got to do this too. This kid's got to be overwhelmed. I mean, like, of course he's going to throw the knife thing. He doesn't want that crap.
No,
I wouldn't either.
No. And then Grumman breaks his promise to Lee. Like him telling Will to take the knife to Asriel. He knew it. Like he knew he was doing that, and he kind of felt bad about it. But he's like, well,
not bad enough.
Yeah, not bad. And so you know, he broke that promise to Lee. And then the, you know, they kind of the light comes out. He wants to see. And then they realize it. And what makes them realize it? I mean, it's been 10 years. Like, how would he recognize? Will's never seen a picture, right? And he left when Will was like a baby.
I think they recognized themselves in the other.
Maybe the same eyes, you know, that the fierceness in their eyes.
Well, John recognizes his wife's eyes.
Yes. That's right.
And that's how he knows who this is.
But it's short-lived, unfortunately, the reunion. You know, we knew Judah was going to roll up, I guess. You know, why do you drop that piece of information?
Yeah.
You know, during that witch's cabal, that she wasn't going to turn up. Although I didn't necessarily think she would turn up in this way, which is essentially just immediately kill him.
Yeah.
Right.
He's like dead right away.
Oh yeah.
It's not like, he's got a wound. They're going to say goodbye, and there's not going to be a moment. No, he is dead.
Yep.
Oh,
she kills him.
Yep.
And Will is pissed.
He freaks the heck out. He is like ninja. He's like whoosh, and grabs her Robin demon.
Yep.
And I'm guessing at this point I think he would know that touching a demon is a no-no.
Yeah.
And he sees it and he grabs it, and she's like screaming, no. Like, you know, she is freaking out, and he's just like, would you do that? Like, oh my, like, why would you? I was waiting for him to like truly snap here.
I think he did. Like, that's Will
He
broke.
snapped. He broke.
Will was done. I mean, that's why he's like shaking her and everything. Will was broken. All this stuff culminated in. It's like he said, he's gone through all this just to see his father, and then she killed him as soon as he realized that's who it was.
And her excuse is lame too, and Will thinks it's lame, which is like,
oh,
this is how we witches do.
Yeah,
that's the excuse.
Yeah, she's like, I loved him. You wouldn't understand.
But as soon as she says that was my father, he says that was my father. She recognizes that that's bigger than any spurned love that she had.
Mm-hmm.
This was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And she's afraid of him here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she is legit. Like, I mean, she's a witch. She's a grown woman. She's a witch. You know, she can fly, and she is so afraid of him. And I think it says that she's never seen a fierceness in anybody. In anyone. That would mean including Asriel, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, as she saw this ferocity in Will at this moment. And then when he tells her who it is, she said, well, that's not possible.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what's possible. He
says, you think things have to be possible, right?
Uh-huh.
It's such a great answer.
Because that's basically his entire arc in this book, right? His entire journey in this book has been dealing with things that shouldn't be possible, yet they are. Mm-hmm. Yet they happen, like windows in the world that take him to another world. You know, Lyra, the knife, everything. Like none of these things are possible, but they're all true. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that is like his entire mission statement in one sentence.
Right. And when she realizes that it's true, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily noble, but then she takes the knife and she falls on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, like that. And I love what it says after. It says, Will felt no horror, only just desolation and bafflement, which I think is probably the two best adjectives.
Because I really think that's where it boils down to his being an 11-year-old boy.
Yeah.
What the heck just happened?
Yeah, not even hard. He wasn't like mortified. He was just like, the bafflement is the best. He's just like, what just happened? Like, what is
just drained of emotion at that moment. He's just so spent. Mm-hmm. You know, horror and sadness and anger. He's just used all of it. And he's got nothing left. Yeah,
and what he does with his father then, when he's like just like cleaning his face, and he's like the father, daddy.
He uses all the. Yeah,
he's never had the chance to call him daddy.
He's never said it before.
He's never been able to say it to him before.
No, but this is this is the moment, you know. Into the Spider-Verse, when everybody's, you know, Peter Parker dies and Spider-Gwen's like, I'm going to, you know, take up the mail. Like, he is like, I'm going to do it.
Yep.
Father, you know what I mean? I will continue, you know, and this is what his mother was saying. Like, his mother was saying his entire life, you're going to take up the mantle of your father. And I think he thought, you know, he was saying, I think he even had a conversation like that a little bit with Lyra. And he was just like, she would just say this. Like, I think she just said this kind of as it, but like, she really meant it. Like, you're going to take over for what your father is doing. And he does.
But then he literally picks up his mantle. He takes the cloak and puts it on his shoulders.
He does.
That, like, I gave me chills when it's like the feather trimmed cloak. He puts it on. It's too big for him, but he's gonna wear it anyway because that's what he needs. That's what he needs.
Mm-hmm.
And that was amazing.
So he has a new purpose, and he takes that new purpose and goes back down to the camp, and gets a major wrench thrown in this purpose, which is piles of witches and an empty spot where Lyra once lie. What do you do there?
I mean, think about that. Like, he's just gotten, like you said, his purpose. He's gone through all of that in what, 5-10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All of that emotional flipping and turning around to get to where he needs to be, and then it's yanked out from under him again.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like it mirrors that moment when Lyra realizes that she brought her father Roger in, like, instead of the alethiometer. Like, there's this moment of just like, he, because we also forget to say that on the way there he had 2 angels visit with him.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, dude, we need you to come with us to go see Lord Asriel. He's like, you know what? That's great, but I need to go back and, like, talk to Lyra. So they all go down, and then she's not there. And he, like, the book literally ends with him staring at the backpack like, "Brr?" Like a big question mark. Like, he has no idea what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, I don't know.
And there are 2 angels, like angels,
Yes.
They're like,
that can't
come
tell
with
him
us.
what to do.
Yeah. Other
than come with us.
That's the one thing that they think he needs to do. That's the only thing that they can tell him. But he still has free will. He could still do whatever he wants to do. And he's the knife bearer. They need him. But also Lyra's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
What's
looking
the
at
point of any of this if Lyra's gone? That's what he's thinking.
Yeah. And now we have flying specters. Hello. She told the specters, convinced them that there was no reason that they were not able to fly. It made them forget that they couldn't fly. I thought that was an interesting. Again, what kind of powers does she have?
Yeah. What the heck?
You know what that reminded me though of was Hitchhiker's Guide. You learn to fly when you fall and forget to land.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So now we've got airborne specters, and Lyra's missing, and Will is has a huge mission that he has to accomplish. I would assume that he is going to want to get Lyra back first.
Yeah.
He's fiercely protective of her.
Well, that's why he doesn't hear the angels, right?
That's right. He's just tuned them out.
Yeah.
But where does he go now? Like, how does he find her? I guess we'll find out.
I mean, there's zero hint here. There's zero hint. At least in the last book, Pullman was like, and she crossed the bridge into another world. And you're like, okay, my brain can kind of go and pick up it. And this is just like, Will stood there staring at the backpack that had the alethiometer and was unsure of what to do. The end.
The end.
Can you believe that we're taking a multi-month hiatus before
it's true.
we get to the next one?
That's right. We go all the way to Christmas. We're not going to talk about it till after Christmas.
We're not smart.
Nope.
Oh,
and who, why would he trust these ridiculous angels, with that sort of, again, that sort of haughtiness that, I don't know, eternal beings must have. He was like, you were here the whole time. Why didn't you save my dad? And they were like, oh, well, we would have if it would have been before, but he led us to you, so there was really no reason. Like, they saw, like, no reason to save. I don't know. I felt like an iRobot when he's like, save the girl. And he's like, I'm going to take. It's like, why wouldn't you save the dad? If you had any heart, if you had any compassion, like, and that's curious to me because, well, actually, it's not curious to me. What because if you believe in God and you believe in Jesus was compassion and mercy and love and grace. But if you're saying that God, this authority, isn't those things, why would the angels be either? It's just doing like what it needs to get what it needs to go to the next. Do you know what I mean? I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the authority. I think there's a very good reason that they use the term authority instead of God, beyond Pullman trying to avoid people picketing bookstores. It's just this is the complete absence of free will. And if angels are working for God, it stands to reason all they're going to see is their, narrow mission. They're not going to see, the need for compassion, the humanity that would, give their mission like a greater meaning. You know, all they're here for is to do this. They're done. They're bureaucrats. You know, they get Form A, they fill out Form A and pass it on to Window B. You know, that's their whole job. So,
It's depressing.
yeah. It's not how I like angels to be.
Well, as we speak right now, the show has premiered in the UK. We haven't gotten it over here yet, but we are going to get to see it tomorrow, Monday. Very excited.
Yes.
Yes.
And we will the next day, Tuesday, we're going to record a quick hot take on it and talk a little bit about it. And then weekly from there on out, we're going to talk about the show until we get all the way back deep into December, and we can jump into the Ember Spyglass finally, find out what the heck happens. I'm going to have to sneak a peek into at least chapter 1 and 2 because I need to know at least a couple things. But it's been quite the journey so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing this show.
Have you guys? I'm reading this on Kindle. So, do you guys not have the supplemental materials that are in the appendix?
Nope.
I don't know.
Nope, I don't. I just have a regular
Me
book.
neither.
The Kindle version has maps, and it's got John Parry's notes.
Whoa, that's
What?
interesting.
Yeah.
Mine is made of a paper with print on it.
Mine is made of bits and bytes and electronics. And if you look here,
It's very bright.
let's see. Oh, there we go.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. It shows the difference in geography between Lyra's world and our world. John did some note-taking and mapping.
Can you screenshot that and send it to us?
I have screenshotted it. I will make sure I send it to you then.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a German ocean where Germany was. There's all kinds of really neat stuff in here.
I'm intrigued.
I'm looking. I can't. And it's got the recipe for the salve. That's why I said earlier the easily produced salve, because it's got the recipe for how he came up with the stuff to heal Will's fingers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I now know what blood moss looks like.
Well, you are way ahead of me here.
You know what? Okay. Could you make me feel any worse?
Let's see. Can I? I also know what the
the
subtle knife looks like.
I'm feeling terrible now about my book. I was excited that the first chapter of the Amber Spyglass was in the back of my book.
That's
Me
it.
too.
Ooh, I can
too.
read that. I can read it. And Travis is like, I got extras for days.
I got it. I got supplemental materials, Joe.
Well, we so appreciate everyone coming on this journey with us. Book 2 is at an end, and now we're diving into the show for a couple months. 8 episodes.
It's gonna be fun, guys.
It's gonna be really fun. The episode names we put out on our social media, and they are very closely resemble the chapters of the book, do they not? And
they
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, except the 7th chapter. I think the 7th episode.
That one's different.
I think it's a little different. I think they use it. They call it. I think it's called the demon cages, and I don't believe that's what the It's not what the chapter is called.
Okay.
They took a little bit of liberty there, which I will allow.
I will allow that too. I'll allow it. And so we'll after this, honestly, once you hear what we're saying right now, there will be an episode that'll come out very shortly after that will be about the TV show.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening, and have a great night.
Bye, everybody.
See you later.